조선중앙 방송입니다.
Hello and welcome to the Pioneer Podcast, something that is already gaining legendary status. I'm joined as always by Justin Martell, and today we are interviewing one of the most famous travel bloggers and backpackers on the planet, Jonny Blair.
Yeah, well, it's great to be on, Gareth. Thanks for the introduction, and the Pioneer Podcast. Brilliant that we got it going in these times. People need something to cling to. They need something to listen to. They need to be inspired about travel. So I'm absolutely loving it. I've even cracked open a beer today, which is unusual since the bars are closed, but I'm at home. So thanks for the introduction, and can't wait to have a discussion today.
Wonderful. I've cracked open a Cambodia beer as well as I'm sitting here in Phnom Penh. So we've got a lot I'd like to talk about today, but just before we get discussing stuff, I just want to talk to our listeners out there and re-inform you about how this works. So for the first half an hour of the podcast, we're just going to have a little chat and learn a little bit about Jonny. And that is the free part. This is for all you freeloaders. The second half is for paid subscribers to YPT Life. You can find us on ypt.life/subscribe. It costs less than 10 cents a day to subscribe with us. But it is in the second half of the podcast where we get juicy. And when that comes to Jonny, it means we are going to be talking about micronations, how many countries there are in the world, and all of the countries that Jonny has been to. And believe me, if you're into obscure places, this is just going to mess with your head. And Jonny, if I do say so myself, I often refer to you as the foremost expert when it comes to micronations.
Even the word micronation itself, it conjures up a wee bit of magic, because people then ask you, what is that? Define it. What is a micronation? And yeah, they really do. People get interested in it. I could write books on it. Well, I've done that, but
we're definitely, don't worry, before our first half an hour is up, I'm definitely going to give you a great chance to plug your books. But first of all, could you introduce yourself to us? I know you from your Don't Stop Living blog, but I know you've started a new blog since then. And you actually inspired me to recently write a blog about being in Cambodia for a year, because I read this is the longest you've been in any country for a year. So tell us about your blogging history, and tell us about basically what you're doing now.
Yeah, okay, Gareth. Well, I think I can't really cut this too short, because it is quite a long story, but as quick as I can be. Basically, when I was a kid, I was always writing. Writing was that pen was my inspiration. If I was watching football on TV, or I was sitting in school or something, I'd have my pen, I'd be writing something. Teacher would probably come up and say, "What are you doing?" We're supposed to be watching a movie, or we're supposed to be learning, French. What are you writing? And I was always writing, whether it's about football or poetry. So when I started traveling, of course, the natural thing for me to do was to write about it. I just wrote it on a piece of paper. I'd be like, "Oh, what did you do today? Oh, I was in Berlin. I had, this was my lunch. This was where I slept. This was how many different drinks I had, what different sights I saw." I was just writing it all. And then it was one day that the internet became a wee bit more prominent, and I had my own email address eventually, and then the idea of starting a blog came up when I was in Canada. I was backpacking in Canada, and I met two guys in my hostel actually had a blog, and they were like, "Oh, what are you doing, Jonny? Why are you writing all your stuff down on paper every day?" And I was like, "Well, I'm writing it because I want to tell my story. One day I might write a book about that." And they're like, "Why don't you write it now? Write it on the internet now. Put it online tonight." And I was like, "Well, I don't know how to do that." I wasn't a tech guy, Gareth. I was just really a writer, a tourist, a blogger, a backpacker. I was all of the things that were just creative in essence, but they had no substance on the internet or in a book. They didn't have any form. So that was the changing moment for me. I said, right, I'll start a blog. Well, if you're going to start a blog, you need to have a name for it. And the most boring name you could get is putting your name and then apostrophe S blog, Jonny Blair's blog.
Yes.
Sounds boring.
Yes.
So think of a name. But the name came to me too easily because Don't Stop Living was always my mantra for life. It was like I've always it's been my catchphrase. I actually stole it. I was backpacking in Canada. I seen written on a high school wall with graffiti, someone had written there, and I'll never forget it, they had written in capital letters, even put the apostrophe in, they'd just written Don't Stop Living in red graffiti on a wall. And I wrote it down and said, right, that's it. That is, they've said it in 3 words with an apostrophe, which it just, it satisfied my desire for life. Don't stop living. So I took that. And then
if you can keep a secret, I actually stole the name Young Pioneer in Young Pioneer Tours.
Yeah. There's actually, I don't know if you're into Oasis, but I'm really into Noel Gallagher. He's one of my heroes, and he has a quote, and I love it. Somebody asked him, did he borrow a line or did he borrow a note from some other artist? And he just said, well, nothing's original. There are only 12 notes. What do you want me to do? And, if you look at a song like Wonderwall, for example, I mean, he's obviously taken inspiration from somewhere. There's a book by George Harrison with the word Wonderwall in it, isn't there? Or there's an album. So I still Don't Stop Living from a high school graffiti. Thanks for whoever wrote that. Cheers, mate. I'll buy you a drink someday. But I created a blog out of it, Gareth, and that's obviously your question is about creating the blog. So I created the blog. It was easy to put my words online. The only difficult bit was the tech side of it. So I needed someone to sort of help set up the blog. And then as soon as I knew how to write and upload photos and videos and put links in, that was it. That was me, and then that from every day from then on, I became the Don't Stop Living blogger. So that's how. Well, I mean, I would like to blogs.
I would like to kind of interject on this because I think you're underplaying yourself a little bit here. I mean, when we talk about travel bloggers, like nowadays, everyone wants to be a travel blogger. Everyone wants to be a travel blogger. Okay, you weren't the original, but you were one of the originals, really, wasn't you? You were one of the first people making money out of this. I mean, it's hard to do it now. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think this is the weird thing, Gareth. When you say that it was one of the original, I was one of the last bloggers to learn how to do it, but one of the first to sort of master it. It sort of, I came in basically. If you can think about, it's like Port Vale against Stoke. It's 1-0 to Stoke, and then Port Vale scored 2 in the last 2 minutes, and they've won it. So I felt a wee bit like that because I did sort of come in. I had my blog in 2007, but there were bloggers before that were. That were never in it to make money. They were just in it to write their stories, and then they quit. And I just kept it going. It took me a long time to make money on it and to start getting hotel stays and things like that. But when that happened, I sort of expected it, but it did take a hell of a lot of work in the early days. But I know what you mean, though. At that time, I guess there wasn't many people thinking, it's a business. People thought it's just a website. Well, Google's just a website, but they've made a pretty good business out of them.
Well, I don't necessarily say. I mean, one of the things I admire about you. I mean, I do think when it comes to travel blogging, you were genuinely a trailblazer. I mean, out of interest, when was the last time you had what we would call a real job, as it were? Yeah,
but the thing is, though, Gareth, when you say about a real job, I've always been a freelancer anyway. Even when I've been doing my teaching, I was freelancing. When I worked in Australia, I was working in bars and farms. For me, you see, this term real job, everything's a real job for me. So, if you're talking about 9 to 5, in an office, then it would have been when I was teaching in Hong Kong. I did that. I had a 9 to 5 regular thing. But before that would have been London. I worked for a PR agency in London 2006. Great agency, actually, great job, great times. But that would be my last sort of Monday to Friday monotonous routine job. So it would be 15 years since I did a job that I knew I didn't want to do for life. If that's that, I think that's maybe a better answer to your question.
I think, yeah, exactly. I mean, certainly. I know myself. Again, when you say like a real job, I mean, it's Sunday, and I've worked all today. I mean, granted, it's been online, and granted, I'm living in Phnom Penh. It's not a bad life, but no, people underestimate sort of how hard people like us do work. But yeah, I mean, I think people, you write on your blogs. You've written blogs on how other people can start blogging, right? You've written stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't do that at the start because it wasn't my position to tell other people what to do, but I realized that people kept emailing me and asking me. So rather than answer 1,000 emails, it's easier just to write a post and just send them the link. So it got to the point where, and people are, Gareth, people were asking me about, oh, I noticed you crossed from Paraguay, Brazil into Paraguay. Tell me how you did that. And I thought, fuck this, I'm just going to write about it. If I just write about it, and then, how do you do this? And then they email you, oh, here's a link. Oh, they don't have any more questions because you've answered everything for them on the link. You've just said, here's... And then they'll say to me, oh, do you think the border will still be open? And you're like, well, I did it in 2010. So if it's still open, it's still open. If it's not, nothing to do with me. But I wrote about why I did it at the time. So I think, a little bit about the sort of... Not telling people what to do, but just telling them what I did and saying, if you want, this is how I did it, and you have a choice that if you want to see those sites or to backpack through that country or get that visa, you could copy me and you'll probably get it if you follow my tips,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, use this opportunity. I mean, I'm a huge fan of your blog. I've been reading you on off for years. So if you do want to shamelessly, whilst we've got the freebies, whilst we've got all the freeloaders on, do you want to shamelessly plug your blogs for us? Tell us your URLs. Tell us where you want people to be reading.
Yeah, so, I mean, if people do read Don't Stop Living, which if you Google it, you may not even get my blog because there's so many, obviously, words that have Don't Stop Living in them. But it's don'tstopliving.net, don'tstopliving.net, all one word, a lifestyle of travel. It's got about 5,000 articles or pages on there of my travels through all the countries. Some of those are sponsored posts, some of them are sponsored hotels, some of them are sponsored trips. There's no bullshit with it. Some of that is on there, but most of it is the genuine me traveling and telling you what I ate, what I drank, what time I woke up, what sights I saw, whether a museum was worth it. Whether the border crossing was difficult, whether the visa was difficult. So that was my baby in life, was Don't Stop Living. And it's on there for all to see. Just click on it, don'tstopliving.net. You can see it also on Facebook. It's the same name. Instagram is Instagram, and then it's also Don't Stop Living. But more recently, I live in Poland. So when you move to a new country, Gareth, as you well know, your niche changes a wee bit. So
yes.
Rather than focus on global travel, I sort of got really immersed into Polish culture, and I was very surprised by the response because Polish people really took it and liked it, and that was probably the biggest surprise from my second my new blog, northernirishmaninpoland.com. is that Polish people actually liked it. That was the biggest surprise. I was doing it for myself, just to say, I'm a foreigner here. This is what happens when you live in Poland. I could have done it in Hong Kong or Australia when I'd lived before. So I just write about life in Poland, what it's like as a foreigner. You might not understand some of the words they say. You might have really bad Polish. You might buy the wrong product. You might get off the wrong train. You might love the food in the bars. You might have some stories to tell. So I sort of have two niches now. And one is the global backpacking, like you said, with the whole Micronations. And the other one is a foreigner living in Poland with a wee bit of a Northern Irish twist. So yeah, those are the two blogs. And if anyone wants to read them or wants to contact me, I'm always available, and I always try to reply. So you can find me on both blogs.
And again, I would certainly recommend people looking at your blog. So don'tstopliving.net and northernirishlaninpoland.com. Yes?
Exactly right, Gareth. That's the one, yeah.
And and I've got another question, and I've never been able to work this out, if it was art or if it was for nefarious reasons. In your blogs, you drop a lot of song quotes in. And I couldn't work out if this was some weird way to beat the Google gods at SEO, or it was just your thing.
Oh my gosh, right. This, I've never been asked, for a start, I've never been asked that before, but I am aware of it. But I will tell you, this is ridiculous. I think I was about 14 or 15, and I was writing, in my school books, I used to write at the back, like my favourite quotes, whether it was from Shakespeare or Noel Gallagher or Jerry Armstrong, it didn't matter to me. If someone said it and it sounded good, I wrote it down. And I remember writing them on books and stuff like that. And I started printing them when we had a printer, and I stuck them on my door when I was a kid, all these quotes. And they just inspired me. Basically, I'm a man that loves the word. The spoken word, the written word, just the word. If someone tells you a wee bit of advice or a nice quote, I love it. Even, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be Madonna. My baby's got a secret. That's Madonna's song. It's brilliant. It's a genius. What secret is it? What's it all about? And so I took a lot of those quotes into my own life, that when I was traveling, I was sort of using them. And from now and then, I would actually I would stick a song on, and listen to it and just be at peace, whether it be in Bolivia. I'm sort of, backpacking through Bolivia. I'm sitting there with the desert. There's a sunset, and I thought, I'll stick a bit of Cast on, or I'll stick a bit of, Britney Spears on or something. It doesn't matter who it is to me. If the artist or the writer or the speaker said something interesting, I write it down and I make it as a quote. It's just sort of it's my homage to people that inspire me. That's what it is.
I love it. I'm so glad. I've always wanted to ask you that, and now I have the answer. And it actually makes so much sense. But it's actually, I enjoy it when I'm reading your blogs. One, because we're of the same generation, so I actually know most of the song quotes, and I know actually what you're talking about. I imagine, I don't know if I was not 18 or 19, I didn't get it or whatever. But for me, it's a great break during what you're writing. And it's a really good style. And again, like I say to our listeners, take a look at his blog. You've been to a lot of places, and it's interesting reading.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a homage to other people. We take our inspiration from people, and it's nice to give them that, publicity back, to say, you wrote that, you inspired me, and this is my story. So you inspired someone. Okay,
absolutely agreed. So it's good to have you here as well. So again, let's talk about how we know each other. When was it the last time I actually saw you? Yeah, and I think that's actually the first time I met you as well.
Yeah, so obviously, Gareth, as a big traveller, and you're a big traveller at set up companies and things like that, we were always going to meet at some point, because we're going to obscure places. I think, with your whole, DPRK and the China history, going into the places in China that no one has heard of, I was sort of doing the same thing as you. So eventually we were going to find a way to be meeting anyway, as you do. So a few emails, I think it was. I did a few tours with YPT. We were both in Asia living at the time as well. I lived in Hong Kong for a number of years. And then, of course, the first time we physically met, though, was absolutely mad. It was, I remember it, I just come from Transnistria. I was staying in Tiraspol, and I basically came back across the border into Moldova. I was in Chisinau, and then I turned up at a hostel. Needed somewhere to sleep for the night. There was a hostel there, Tapak Hostel. It was a sort of dingy, state of the art dinge hostel, if you can call it that. It was like, no frills really. And I walked in there, and there was Gareth and the YPT crowd. Chris was there. Yeah, so that was my first sort of memory of actually physically meeting Gareth. Do you remember that? Do you remember that Moldovan hostel we stayed in Chisinau?
It was horrendous. I think it's basically that was the last time we ever stayed there.
Last time I stayed there.
Yeah, bed bugs. Didn't know it was a thing, but it is. And that hostel had them. and they were just really unfriendly. Generally speaking, so I mean, Moldova, me and you could probably yarn on about for quite a while. But what we now do in Moldova is I find the hostels there are just are not very nice. So we put our groups in the Hotel Cosmos now. You know, the old Soviet affair that's right next to the train station. You see, I love those,
Gareth, do you see those old Soviet hotels? You know, like the tower blocks that, you know, 5 or 6 floors. Yeah. I love them. The rooms are just brilliant because there's nothing in the room. You just walk in and it's a bed, it's a toilet, and you know that is the dream place to sleep because you don't have any distractions. You know what I mean? I love those hotels. Yeah.
I think we might have the very weird situation of 3 people on a call that absolutely agree on loving staying in shit Soviet hotels. But not only that, I think we've probably stayed in the same hotel.
Yeah,
we have all stayed in the Hotel Cosmo, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah. But have we? No, wait. Have we all stayed in the Hotel Iced?
I have.
Which country is that in, Gareth?
They're just in Transnistria, my friend.
Oh, no, because I actually had a homestay when I was in Transnistria. I stayed with a guy called Ilya, who's a friend of Tim from the Tiraspol hostel. So I actually didn't even stay in a hostel in Transnistria. But no, that second one you mentioned, Ice, no, I haven't, to be honest.
We should talk about Tim at some point. He should definitely come up in this.
Yeah, with a crop up, won't he? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the Hotel Ice, there are many stories there. I mean, that makes the Cosmos look like, if we were going to compare sort of Soviet hotels to the Hilton, the Hotel Cosmos is like a Conrad, and the Ice is like the Garden Inn, but more shit. Yeah, it's the Hotel Ice, no running hot water, it's. If a Soviet person went in there in 1980, they would say this looks a bit outdated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been to in the south part of Uzbekistan. There's a city called Termiz. Gareth, have you been there? Termiz?
No, I'm very lacking on Central Asia. I've ticked Kazakhstan off, but that's pretty much it.
No, the reason I mentioned Termiz is I got to Termiz and, you know, I had nowhere to sleep. I got there at about 4 p.m. It was getting dark. I needed a place to sleep and basically had a choice of 2 hotels. First one was just looked too expensive for me. Basically, I walked in and there was there was a chandelier there. So for a start, I thought, well, I'll try the other one. So I went into the other one and it was absolutely textbook Soviet Union hotel. It was called the Xorhan International in Termiz. And I checked in, there was nobody else there. Like, it was basically the woman on reception, and yet she put me on like the 8th floor in room like 872 or something. And so, I'm going up to the 8th floor. I can't hear anything. Am I the only person sleeping there? And you look out, the view of the city was just incredible. And of course, Termiz is on the Afghanistan border. So I checked it on the internet, and it turned out I was sleeping in the most southerly hotel in the former Soviet Union.
Wow.
And it was just, it's the Xorhan International, but it's so like Soviet style. I loved it actually. I only stayed there one night, but it was fantastic, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few experiences in like Georgia and stuff like that. Whenever you stay in the old tourist hotels, you know, like the government run ones, the Yangat days of their time. There is just something. It's just something really cool about it. But anyway, so back to when we met. I remember the hostel less so than I remember a bit of a mad train journey.
Well, this is another thing, Gareth. I don't know if you know this, but basically, I didn't have a ticket for that train, and it was only when I was talking to Chris at reception. We should introduce as Chris Kelly as well. We should,
big up to Chris Kelly. Big up to Chris Kelly. Yeah. I hope you're listening to this, mate.
He's the Everton fan, so Chris is out there, and Chris and I were just having a wee chat. It wasn't anything long. I was like, "Oh, Chris, we should go out have a few drinks and stuff," and he's like, "Well, we can't because we're on the night train tonight." I'm like, "Oh, so I think you stayed there. We all stayed there the same night, and then the next night you were on the night train." But I had planned to stay initially in Kishinev. I was meant to stay there like another day or two. And then I thought, well, actually, I'll just go back to Bucharest now. I'll get the same night train as you, but I didn't have a ticket, so I just basically chanced it. So that same night, I went down to the main train station in Chisinau, just before you guys. So I sort of went in there hoping there would still be a ticket. There was a bed in a dorm, a bed on the night train. But as you well know, Gareth, the bed wasn't used. I paid for a ticket for the train. I got on the train. I certainly was on the train, but I certainly didn't need the bed. And you can probably tell us a bit more why the bed wasn't actually where I was going to sleep.
Well, indeed. So I'll do a shameless plug on this. So for anyone listening, if you really want to have a great time and a great party, join our Eurasian Adventure Tour. So on the Eurasian Adventure Tour, we do a lot of stuff. We start in Beijing, Moscow, go through Belarus, go through Ukraine, do Chernobyl, Transnistria. But at this point, we take the train from Chisinau, to Bucharest. And this is one of our tours that tends to be quite busy. So on the very last day of our tour, we visit, is it Krakova Winery?
That one, yeah.
Yeah, Krakova Winery. Biggest wine cellar, underground wine cellar in the world.
Oh,
That's
hold on. This is the one is this the one in Moldova?
Yes.
I'm just thinking is Krakova one the Romanian one? I've forgotten, Gareth, actually.
I think it's Krakova. I mean, I might
you're
be
right.
wrong.
You're right. It is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's the biggest, supposedly, again, the biggest underground wine cellar in the world. You've got presidents and kings have all got expensive wines down there and stuff. But they also do Moldovan champagne. Moldovan sparkling wine, however you want to put it. So this train journey has gained infamy almost as the champagne train, we like to call it, because people go to the winery in the day, they buy wine, they buy champagne, and then we take the 15-hour train journey, 15 hours or so from Chisinau to Bucharest, and we tend to party. And I think on the year that you met up with us, there was 20 plus of us, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big party, Gareth. The thing is, I was backpacking on my own at that point. It was just me. So I as you can imagine, so inspired, just being in Transnistria for a start. Then I get back to Chisinau. It was pissing down with rain. It was murky. It was grey. I get a ticket for the train. I thought I'll have a few beers, maybe have a few beers with you and the boys and girls, and then I'll get a wee sleep for the night, and I'll waken up in Bucharest. Got on the train, and this is the truth. I only bought 4 beers. That's all I bought. I bought a 4-pack. Got on the train. I thought that'll do me tonight. Well, that probably was finished by the time the train had left Moldova. By the time we were at the Romanian border, we were into the wines, and there was just...
Well, I remember sharing with you, I always buy them whenever I'm in Moldova, but probably the worst alco pops in the world. So Moldova, I can't remember the brand name, but they do like it's like the Philippines with Tanduay Ice. They do like a blue one, a red one, but they do one that is a gin and tonic one that actually tastes a bit like gin and tonic. So I'd stocked up on a ton of them because I can't stand Eastern European beer in a plastic bottle. I just can't do it. So me and you ended up on those. There was champagne flying about everywhere. And then we crossed one of the most intense borders there is. We crossed into the EU.
I love that border.
Whilst having a few beers.
It's what I also love is, you remember the delay? Well, I think it's always there's a delay because the train tracks don't match. Isn't that right, Gareth?
You have to. Okay, so it's a different gauge. So you've got the Russian gauge and basically the Western gauges. So it's what they actually have to do is, in the old days you had to get off the train. I think when on R1 they let us stay on it, but they literally lift the train up, take the wheels off, and replace them with wheels that will work to go on the other gauge.
Yeah, so it takes about 2 hours, doesn't it? 2 or 3 hours.
It's like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
So your choice is you either get off or stay on, basically. And there's at least, I remember a couple of funny stories, because there's certainly there's a long point where you can't use the bathroom, which means that which means that for people who've been drinking can prove problematic. And I remember an imaginatively used Fanta bottle and somebody trying to ask somebody if they wanted to try their Moldovan Fanta. But that's going off on a very different tangent.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that party train, I like to call them the party train because I've done quite a few of those, cross borders, is I don't know why this happens, Gareth, but sometimes I meet fellow tourists or backpackers and they say to me, oh, I don't like the night trains, I hate the delay at the border. But me, I love them. I sit there with a beer, I talk to people, I do a bit of writing, I look out the window. I love that idea of crossing a border. And the 2 hours that they're checking passports or changing the trains over onto a different track, that for me, that is bliss. That is like no care in the world. Travel is in a nutshell. Put me on a train, send me somewhere, and I'll arrive in 12 hours time in another place, and I'll be so inspired. I mean, do you agree with me, Gareth? Is this yours?
God, absolutely. And that particular, the Moldova-Romania train, I've taken that, God, 6 or 7 times, and I've done it in both directions as well. One of my favourite train journeys, but I mean, I've done much like yourself. I've done the rounds, so I've done China into Mongolia, Mongolia into Russia, Russia into Kazakhstan. Like, I absolutely, being on a train is certainly my happy place. And crossing borders on a train, I just think there's nothing more amazing. I
just got a wee flashback there, Gareth. This is a random one, just off on a tangent. But the first cross-border train I got, I do believe, was to watch an Oasis concert in Dublin. It was Belfast to Dublin, and this is not a joke.
Wow!
There was a bomb scare at just south of Newry. So I was going, Belfast to Dublin, as you do in those days, back in the 90s, it was glory days of Northern Ireland. And you'd get to somewhere and there'd be, there's a slight delay for a bomb scare. Oh, it's okay, we've cleared the track now. Next stop is Dundalk and then Drogheda, and you're in Dublin before you know it. So I sort of still love that magic, of getting on the train and there could be a problem or you just don't know. We got to Dublin, obviously, because that's an easy one. It's like 2 hours or something, but it's still the magic of it. Waking up in another country, obviously, as I class Northern Ireland and Republic is separate. It's the same with, obviously all those border crossings that you've done on the trains, Gareth. It's the passport check and the magic of it,
Yeah, exactly. But it is kind of amusing that you've crossed into from the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union into sort of the West. You've done all these crazy journeys, but the only bomb scare you got was in Northern Ireland going into Ireland, so that's kind of it's kind of crazy in a way itself.
Yeah, I guess it was quite common though back in those days. It might not even have been a bomb scare. It could have even been a dog on the track, but you just class it as a bomb scare in those days. It was like, there's a delay. Oh, it must be a bomb scare. But I'm guessing that one probably was something like that. Back in those days it would have been.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in London, at that point in the 90s, it was bomb scares they were pretty frequent. I mean, again. Not to get too political, but the modern sort of war on terror and stuff like that, and people don't realise that for decades in the UK it was a thing. We were just used to it to an extent.
I get flashbacks, Gareth. Every time I talk to you, I get a flashback. Here's one for you, and this is so random, it's ridiculous. But today, as I know, is actually the FA Cup is on. But do you remember there was a bomb scare at White Hart Lane one day when Spurs were playing Forest in a semi-final? There was a delay, and then Forest beat them, and then Teddy Sheringham played for Forest, and he ended up signing for Spurs after that. I don't know. I mean, as an Arsenal fan, I was just wondering if you do remember that.
No, I don't. Again, if we talk for the years, that must have been. It would have been pre 91, I guess.
Yeah, you might have been in China. I don't know where you'd have been, but I'm not sure if you'd have been in. Would you have been in England then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, bit of digression there from the
looking at my watch, as I expected, we've been talking for quite a while now. So that means we've now hit the halfway point of the Pioneer podcast. That means we say a fond farewell to all you freeloaders, and we say a big hello to our Pioneer members, subscribers, VI Pioneers, Ultimate Pioneers, and Patreons. And we start the second part of the podcast. So goodbye and hello. Okay, so let's start on part 2 of the Pioneer podcast. So, Jonny, as we've already ascertained, you're a very interesting person in general. You're a pioneer, as it were, when it comes to travel blogging. You've been to a lot of places. You've written books. But for me, anyway, the most interesting thing about you, and I often quote you as being the foremost expert when it comes to micronations. So, without further ado, I will let you explain what a micronation is before we start arguing about stuff.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the thing is, Gareth, you can throw words at people, and these are the words you can throw at them. You can throw at them words like nation, country, kingdom, republic, etc., etc. You know, people go, where are you from? Oh, I'm from the Czech Republic. Oh, so you've got a republic there. Is that, you know, and then you sort of get into this debate. Oh, what's the name of the country? Oh, where are you from? I'm from the United Kingdom. Oh, you've got a king there. No, it's a queen. But you still call it kingdom. Okay. So what always fascinated me, certainly as a kid, Gareth, would have been, you know, FIFA and the World Cup and all these countries, because you'd see something on there and, you know, you would see a country and you'd think, well, where is it? What is it? And somebody has to decide whether it's a real country or not. But realistically, the only people that should decide whether a country is real or not are the people that live there. So, you know, the way I see it is, if the people that live there think it's a country, then it's a country. That is the way I look at it. So a micronation could be, you know, 5 guys in a house in Warsaw or in Belfast or in Phnom Penh, and they say, right, guys, we got a flag, we got a currency, we're making a bit of money here, we're going to have a country. And they just make a country. They could make it in a tent in Phnom Penh, you know, put a flag up, put a border up, charge people entry. You know, I'd pay to become a tourist there. Give me a passport stamp, I'll go in. If you got a national food, if you got a national flag, you got a national football team. So I like to be quite separatist in it, where I would look quite in detail at what actually do the people there want. Do the people want that to be a country? And if they want it, then I normally count it as a country. And because of that, I like to go there and see what it is. So micronations, Gareth. Yeah, what do you think of a micronation? What's a micronation to you?
Well, I mean, I'll throw in one little tidbit here, is that me and you certainly don't agree on what counts as a country, but I've seen many people giving you so much crap online about this, and I always stick up for you, don't I?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but do you know why they give me all that crap? Because they actually think that I'm not being serious. People, they don't take time to meet me. You know, if I tell someone that I was in Transnistria, Australasia, and the Kingdom of Lovely, people will think that my head's in Cloud Cuckoo Land. Well, actually, it's not. My feet are on the ground probably more than they are, because I'm not living in their fantasy world. I'm living in the reality that if someone wants to start a country, they can start it. You know, at some point, somebody decided to start a country somewhere. So, you know, you talk about the Chinese dynasties, and you talk about, you know, Julius Caesar, and you can go back in history wherever you want around the world. Napoleon, Saddam Hussein, whoever you want to say that was some type of ruler or landmark, you know, creator of a nation, they did something about it. And so in 2021, people are still doing things about that and trying to make a country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, aren't you a citizen of a country that I run?
Exactly right, and this country, this country you're talking about, I am a citizen of it, but there was a little bit of a debate about the name of that country, because I mean, maybe you could go into more about that, but the name of the country seemed to be the same as the name of Iceland, but in a different language. Do you remember that debate?
That is true, and that debate is still going on. And then, you know, like many a country, I believe Swaziland recently became Eswatini. So who knows?
I've got to change all my URLs.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, again, it might be something that changes in the long run. But I mean, I love the Principality of Islandia. And again, for anyone that's on here, shameless plug, www.letsbuyanireland.com. You can pay and own a slice of a private island in the Caribbean and also help us build the Principality of Islandia. But to go back to your question on what I count as a micronation.
Islandia.
Sorry.
Yeah, just when you talk about Islandia, I've just realised something that you miss by being online that you don't get when you speak to people or know a bit more, because for some reason I was calling it Islandia at the start, and now I realise it's Islandia, so it's actually totally different, isn't it? It's got this sort of dreamlike Caribbean, Islandia airport, Islandia International, seaport. It's a wee bit It's a wee bit profound, actually, Gareth.
I like it. I got to say, I'm a fan of it.
Yeah. So I'm obviously, I'm a citizen there, but if people want, they can become a citizen of Sealand. People can become citizens of different countries. And they have to realize that becoming a citizen of the country doesn't necessarily allow you to travel globally with that passport. That is the crux of it. Unfortunately, that's the way the UN, the EU, and the United Nations are trying to construct their globe, whereby Taiwan is not allowed to play in the World Cup under the name Taiwan, which I don't agree with it. I think they should be in the World Cup as Taiwan. But there we go, another debate, Gareth, we can have.
And certainly as a resident of China, a debate I'm not going to get into.
Aha. Okay. Yeah. I used to live in Hong Kong, so let's try maybe keep the Chinese side out for today. Then, yeah.
I definitely have zero opinion about any of that.
Yeah. Respect.
But to answer your question, what do I consider a micronation? Again, much like yourself, this is something I write about a lot. So for me, I feel that there are, you're a football man, so I'll put it like this. You've got your Premier League, you've got your Championship, you've got your League One, your League Two. And for me, micronations fit into this. You've got your level 4, your level, your League Two or whatever, which might just be a guy sitting in his living room who's a little bit wacky. League One might be, your Kingdom of Lovely, where because he's a celebrity, he's got a lot of stuff going on. Your Championship, I can't think of a good Championship one, but certainly in the Premier League, you've got Sealand, formerly Hutt River Province, who unfortunately have gone back to Australia. And you've got your Christianas and stuff like that. And what's the one in Croatia? Liberland. So I think at the top, you've got your Sealands, your Liberlands, your stuff like that. So to me, they're almost like new country projects. And I would consider Sealand. We have a Young Pioneer Tours list of kind of what we call a country. And certainly Sealand, I would count as a country for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely count it, Gareth. I've got good and bad stories from my travels. I've actually been in touch with Sealand I think it's about 14 or 15 times now. Email tennis for the last 10 years trying to get in there, and they won't give me a visa. But yet a guy was allowed to run a half marathon there, on a treadmill. So it's sort of
don't worry. They don't answer my emails either. If it makes you feel any better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. Yeah. But, one day we'll have to get a pirate ship. We'll get a pirate ship, grow a big beard, and get over there and find the treasure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fuck it. I tell you what. This is a Pioneer Podcast exclusive. When I go back to Europe, me and Jonny Blair. Justin, are you coming or not? Justin?
I'm in.
Okay, Justin's in.
I'm in.
So there's three of us. There's three of us so far. When I go back to Europe, we're going to. I can't remember the name of the port, but we're going to go to a port. We're getting a boat and we're going to Sealand.
It's only 12 miles from Ipswich, isn't it? I mean, they're almost. When you
Ipswich.
Talk about
that's the one.
Ipswich are in League One at the minute.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
if you look at
Or
the
Felix
history of
Stowe.
everything that's gone on there,
Yeah.
shootouts, a government in exile, what could go wrong?
Yeah,
They've got their own
exactly.
currency.
Worst
right?
case, we
I'm
get
just curious how much a beer would be. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a good. These are all
Yeah, sorry,
questions
it's
that
cutting
need
out
to
about-
be answered.
Cutting out a bit there, Gareth. Apologies for that. I don't know what happened. I didn't hear everything you said, but I was just saying, you know, if I get on a boat and go to Sealand with my own beer, will they have import tax? You know, will they say, look, why are you bringing your own beer? We've got our own beer here, made and brewed in Sealand. You know, this is the dream life. Sitting watching the sunset in Sealand, ticking it off as a country, looking at people who think it's not a country and saying, well,
Yeah.
I'm here, where are you? That would be my dream. You know, what's the golden sunset?
I've got a very good friend who's a Duchess of Sealand who has visited, and she sent me some really amazing photos of the place, which unfortunately was on the proviso that I never shared them. So it's something I'm genuinely working on. And mate, if I can get us into Sealand, if you're listening to us, Prince Michael, we want to go to Sealand.
We definitely want to go there.
I'm doubting Prince Michael is subscribing to the Pioneer podcast, but anyone who knows Prince Michael and is on the Pioneer podcast, please pass on a message. We would really, really like to come.
Yeah, and I will promote it.
Yeah, exactly. You've got you got me, you got Justin. We could seriously promote this one. And again, at worst case, we go there and get kidnapped. And funnily enough, that was the subject of episode 2 of the Pioneer podcast, getting kidnapped in Sudan. So, I mean, getting kidnapped in Sealand, I mean, it sounds easy in comparison. So, Jonny, so whilst we can certainly agree that me and you have a very different definition of what a country is, I would like to ask you, how many countries, by your definition, have you been to?
I checked it again the other day, and I think it's 188. It's 188. But it's weird because the thing is, I'm not including a country I've physically been to on that, but I'm including 2 countries that I haven't physically been to on it. So it's a bit of a weird one. Yeah.
I think I heard about this. So what? To go into that story, you're not including 2 you've been to. Now tell us about that, because I think there's a funny story. If I'm right, I can't remember who told me. Somebody told me about this, but go for it.
So there were actually, now that I think about it, so basically I've been to Mauritania physically, but I've never left the airport, so I haven't included it in my count. Otherwise, it would be 189. So I've been to Mauritania, okay, yeah. But it's not. Mauritania is not included, but yet I've included 2 countries that I haven't physically been to, and one of them is the Sovereign Military Order of Malta.
Okay.
Because
so this is one. I think was it about 3 or 4 years ago? This is where me and you had a bit of a back and forth, because we were both writing about it at the same time, and you wrote for theculturetrip.com, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I wrote a few articles for the Culture Trip. Yeah, I did write it on Culture Trip.
Let me jump in on that one, because you did us a very good solid, because that was when we previously had YPT Live. So you linked to our article on YPT Live for that from the Culture Trip. So I didn't tell you those many years ago, but thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, if the source of information is good, it's always, it needs to be shown and respected, and people need to see where they need to click online, because there's too many links on the internet, on Google anyway, and most of them, they're rubbish. So it's nice to have, a good proper link to go to. But yeah, the thing about, because this is the thing, is I've actually been in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, because they own a lease on a castle, right? So this is where it gets confusing. So Sovereign Military Order of Malta, according to everyone, doesn't actually have any land, but they have a country because they're allowed in part of the UN Observer. They actually have a vote in the UN Observer in the votes. They're allowed votes, but they don't have physically any sort of barrier or land. Yet they have their own currency, their own stamps, and they have a 99-year lease on a castle in a place called Il Burgu in Malta, on the island of Malta. They also have a building in Rome and some museum also in Rome. So they actually have 3 sort of physical buildings. So I've only visited one of them, Gareth, actually. I've only been to the one in Malta, but I did a guided tour of it, and I classed it that I've been to.
I count that. I count it. Yeah. So I've looked into it. So I think, I can't remember when it was, 3 or 4 years ago, me and you were both a little bit obsessed with the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Unfortunately, I was in Asia at the time, so I never got to do what you did. But we were both back and forth a lot about this. I really want to visit the place in Rome. I would definitely count, because that has extraterritorial status. That is completely not Italy, Yeah. But I would count either of them. I think you're right. I would count it. If I went to the castle, I'd count it. But I'd certainly count if I went to their place in Rome.
You see, this is the thing, Gareth. When another quiz question is, someone said to me, "What's the something about a city in 2 countries or something?" And I said, "Well, I can beat that. There are 3 countries in Rome. You got the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, you got the Vatican City, and you got Italy. They're all in Rome. So if you want to visit 3 countries on a weekend, there you go. Do it. Just fly into Rome. You've done it." But
that is a bloody good quiz question.
Yeah, people will argue that that's not true, but they've all got some type of UN status. But that's official. If you want to be the UN geek, which I'm not because I don't agree with them, but if you want to be a UN geek, there is something that me and you very much agree on, and I find, and I don't care if they're listening, I find nothing more obnoxious than the 193/195 club, and that is why I always end up sticking up for you. So granted, I have my own list. That a lot of people don't agree with. But I say to people like, I don't agree with Jonny's list, but it's up to us to decide. But what pisses me off, I lived in the Cayman Islands, right? So did I live in London? Yeah.
How can you consider the Cayman Islands as England, or consider French Guiana as it's the same as going to France? Bermuda. I mean, we're on to ridiculous levels with this. There is nothing that French Polynesia. So you can go from Guyana to Suriname. You've done 2 countries. You get to French Guiana, it doesn't count. I had Gareth, a friend. I've got a very good friend who's very close to the 193. I'll give him his credit. I won't mention his name. Justin knows who he is, but very good mate. Absolutely love him. But I was like, and he comes on a lot of our trips. I was like, "Hey mate, do you want to come to Greenland?" He's like, "No, I've already been to Denmark." I'm like, I'm not even going to get into this fucking argument with you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, dude? Greenland, like the biggest island in the world, and you don't want to go there because you've been to Denmark. Because it doesn't count for your poxy little list. That annoyed me.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk forever about stuff like this, but who's the only footballer from Greenland to play in the World Cup quarter-final? Do you know that one?
Hit me. I do not know that one.
It's Jesper Grønkjær. He's from Greenland.
I did not know that. I didn't agree to produce any
he was at Chelsea?
Chelsea.
He played for Denmark in I think it was 98 or 2002 World Cup, and he's from Greenland. He's the most famous footballer ever from Greenland, in fairness to him. But he grew up there. So the thing is, he couldn't play for Greenland because Greenland don't have an official team. I think he's played for Greenland, unofficially. But they don't have an official team. So it sort of stems back to that for me a wee bit, from the whole Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England thing, because how anyone can fly into Belfast and then someone says, "Oh, have you been to the UK?" and they say yes, and I'm thinking, yeah, but what did you do? You flew into Belfast, you got a train to Dublin, you ticked off 2 countries, and you left Ireland without even visiting Britain, which is the main part of the UK. Let's be honest, even though I'm from Northern Ireland, the main part of the UK is Britain. It's the island with 3 countries on it. So it's interesting how people think that the UK is a country, because for me it will never be a country. It is a kingdom or a queendom, but it's not a country because you're looking at Gibraltar, Jersey, Isle of Man. You're going deeper in, and I can never class the UK as a country. I will never.
Well,
I want to see the beauty
again,
of the Welsh flag and the Scottish. Yeah.
But this is where me and you can get really geeky, because actually when you talk about Jersey and Guernsey and the Isle of Man and Gibraltar, they're not part of the UK.
That's the thing, but people class them as, because they got the British pound, they've got sort of, you know, this association, like Graham Lasso, Matt Letizia were actually not born in the UK, so they should be able to play for any of the UK-owned countries. But because Guernsey felt like it was closer to English culture, maybe, or in some way closer to England geographically, then obviously they end up playing for... What about Gibraltar, Gareth? What's your thoughts on Gibraltar? For me, it's a country. There's no doubt about it.
Gibraltar's a country. Gibraltar's a country. I've been there. Now, that's part of my list. I mean, again, what I count as a country, which therefore means what YPT count as a country, if you've got a football team, you're in straight away. But basically, countries, territories, self-governing, and with the odd sort of caveat thrown in. So Sealand is certainly in for me. And after going to Bertouille, I think you've got to count Bertouille, because you wasn't in Egypt, you wasn't in Sudan. Where was you? So Bertouille would count for me. I mean, I'll send you I'll send you the YPT list. I'll post it when I post the podcast as well, so that as well as links to your blogs as well, so that people can see the what I call the YPT rules of engagement of what counts as a country.
Yeah, I mean, it's going really deep. When you say about the football team as well, because, you know, places like Abkhazia, South Ossetia, they actually have football teams, and they play in that fake World Cup. I don't know if you've seen that. Have you seen that? Yeah.
We used to be associated with Kanifa, but Kanifa, who run the fake World Cup, as it were, they've gone a little bit crazy themselves, and they're just letting in anybody now. Basically, if you're from,
it's getting a bit
they've
of a
gone
joke
silly.
Then.
Yeah,
I've got people that live in Poland could have a team.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I've got two good friends who were in Kanifa, who will hopefully be joining us for a future podcast. I'm going to hook you up with one of them, because you'd like him. He was the youngest football manager in the world. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent there. But yeah, they let anybody in now. But when it comes to your Abkhazias, your Transnistrias, Northern Cyprus, your unrecognised countries, if you are a self-governing state, then from my point of view, I count that as a country. What I would not count is somewhere like Catalonia, where one might, and I can think of an example that would be more politically sensitive that we won't mention, that you might be able to argue that some places should be a country, but they're not. Did you get what I mean?
Yeah, the thing, I'll tell you, with places like Catalonia, I've included them, but I've actually got a cousin that lives in Catalonia, and he's from Northern Ireland, but he's married a Catalan girl, and he speaks Catalan actually. But the reason I'm into that is sort of the whole, like, the flag and the football, and like the Basque is similar to me, because you've got this.
The Basque is a very grey one. The Basque is one that I think almost has more legs than Catalonia. Like, the Basque is very, very grey.
Do you know who's the only Basque player to win the World Cup? Do you know that?
I don't. I know that in the 90s, or was it in the 80s, that basically the whole Spanish team was Basque for a while.
Actually, Gareth, I think I'm wrong. I think there's more than one now, because the original answer to the question was Lizarazu, who won it for France, but he was from the French Basque. But I think when Spain won it, there was a few more Basque players in there. But I mean, Basque, Catalonia, Spain, it's a tough one, because there's no official border there. You can sort of just pass in, and there's no passport stamps, there's no currency change. That's a tough one, but I think you have to, like, for me, and again, this is why I give some respect to the 193 people. I give some respect to the UN crowd for one thing only, is that their argument is you have to have a line somewhere. So I say, all right, yeah, you're right. Oh, that's
there has to be a line. Yep. So I have a different line. So mine, almost comes back to the football team thing. So I'll count England, Scotland, Wales because we've got separate football teams. But then with Spain is essentially 5 countries. You got the Basque Country, Catalonia. I can't remember the other ones, but you know what I mean.
North Africa, because Spain has the two
parts
of North Africa. Yeah,
Ceuta and Melilla. Now I think I would count them. I would count them, but I wouldn't count the Canary Islands, for example. But I would count Ceuta and Melilla.
I've been to 2 of the 3. What do they call it? The Balearics. I've been to Menorca and Mallorca, but for me that's Spain. So I don't. I also draw the line, actually, Gareth. People think I'm really, encompassing too much, but I'm actually not, because
that's why I always stick up for you. I always stick up for you, mate, because we have different lines, but we've still got a line. But you've just brought up something really interesting. So if we count Gibraltar, we have to count Ceuta and Melilla. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's
interesting. Yeah. But what would happen? Here's a question for you, Gareth. If the 193 type of people, if they fly into Malaga and get the bus into Gibraltar, what country are they in then? If I phone someone in the 193 and I call them and say, "Where are you?" What will they say? Will they say, "Oh, I'm in the UK," or will they say Spain? What's their answer then? Because for me, they're in Gibraltar.
For me, they're in Gibraltar, but I mean, knowing a lot of them, they would be like, "Oh, I'm in the UK. I'm in the UK."
Yeah, I use the British pounds. I'm in the UK. Do you know what I mean? So
exactly.
Then I will lose my respect for them. Imagine traveling all the way. You could actually do a cheater's guide to backpacking. You just give me a bit of inspiration there. You could visit the worst the smallest part of each of those UN countries and count it. So you've never been to France, but you've gone to Polynesia.
Go to like Alderney and count the UK.
Get a boat from northern France into Alderney. You could go to the island off the coast of Poland, which is Danish, which is called Bornholm. So you've done Denmark. You could actually, it would actually be quite interesting. Not the cheapest
you could go to Saint Pierre and Miquelon. Which tell me you know that one. You're going to be one of the only geeks I talk to that knows this.
Now hold on a minute. Which ocean is it in?
I'm not going to give you anything on this. If I've got one over on Jonny Blair, who I consider the expert at this, this is going to make my week, mate. This is going to make my week.
I mean, as a guess, I would say it's a Belgian overseas territory, but I could be wrong.
You're wrong, and I'm gonna introduce you to something that you're gonna absolutely love.
Where is it then?
It's in Canada. It's enclosed by Canada, and it's a French colony. They use the euro.
I go there, seriously, okay. So I wasn't aware of that. Tiny place, tiny place. But it's France. It's for all intents France. So I would probably have to add that to my list then, because I sort of cut Canada into Quebec and Canada originally. That would have been my.
Oh no! You're on 3. So I mean, when I briefly lived in Canada, and it was my dream to go there. But I mean, the cost, Canada's expensive to travel in, and it would have been. I think it's just off of Newfoundland, Newfoundland and Labrador. But no, you can go there. It's the way French treat their colonies. It's actually pretty much just part of France. But well, I'm really impressed. I knew something.
Oh, sure, you beat me.
Very surprised.
Yeah, never heard of it. Yeah. Sorry, guys. If there's anyone out there listening from, where was it again? Saint Pierre and Miquelon. Saint Pierre and Miquelon. Get the beers in the fridge. I'm coming.
Yeah, we'd love. So let's put out anyone from Saint Pierre and Miquelon, get in touch. Me and Gareth Johnson, Jonny Blair, and maybe Justin Martell want to go there. So I'm going to move into another question, because I realise we are getting full on geeky now, and there's something I want to bring Justin involved in, because me and him have talked about this on other podcasts, and we feel strongly about this. But what counts as visiting a country? I've heard lots of different things on this. I've heard people saying they have to have a beer, which again, good luck if you're in Saudi Arabia, although we'll get onto Saudi Arabia later, because you helped us a lot there, if I remember. Some people say they need to go to the toilet in a country, they need to sleep in a country. for you, what counts as being in a country? And then after, we'll let Justin give our opinion on this.
Gareth, you know what? It used to be, I changed my mind on this. It used to be that if you get a passport stamp, you've been there. But then when I started travelling in the EU, going from like France to Belgium, you don't get a stamp anymore. So I had to change it to, you need to like sort of have some type of photographic proof that you've actually left the airport or the train station. So as long as I've been outside of an airport, a train station, a bus station or a seaport and actually breathed the air or got beyond the security, you know what I mean? You got beyond some type of physical governmental border, then I've included it. So the only place I've actually been that is not included in my list is Mauritania, because I didn't leave any physical border. So I guess my short answer would be I really want a passport stamp from every country, but it's not possible for every country to get the passport stamp. So I just have to have some personal physical proof that I've gone beyond the authorities' border and I can actually tell people I'm actually here in the country beyond the border.
Well, in that respect, you've literally just said our exact policy on things. But Justin, I'll let you jump in and give your little 2 cents worth. What is our official policy on visiting a country, and have you been to Greece?
No, I mean, I think that's very much in line with ours. That you pass. Yes, the passport stamp is of course preferred. That's what you want. But yes, as long as you've passed through some sort of security or whatever the government considers to be the border, and that you're not in any sort of just like neutral transit zone or something, in the airport or what have you. Generally, what we say is, have you gone out? Did you clear customs and smoke a cigarette? Essentially, is I would say the accepted YPT rules of engagement there. So in that sense, I've been to Greece. I've been to Turkey, also in that sense. But of course, it technically, so I don't count it either. Like if I'm making a list, but by the rules of engagement, I've been to those places.
Yeah, I think the most upsetting thing for me, Gareth, is that if no, what were you going to say?
No, please carry on.
No,
I was just going to argue with Justin.
I could go from Denmark into Germany. Oh, so okay. Now this is just a total side argument. I could get a car and I could drive from Denmark into Germany, into Holland, the Netherlands, into Belgium, into Luxembourg, into France, into Spain, into Portugal, finish in Portugal, and call someone and say I've been to 9 countries or whatever how many countries that was, and I didn't have a single passport stamp to prove it. So there's part of me that hates that open border thing. So I'm sort of the passport stamp is the dream. The visa and a passport stamp is the dream. If you don't have physical proof, you'll have to actually write an article from there and take a photo or something these days, because it's like you kind of want to prove to people you've done it, because otherwise people say, I think
we're moving. I mean, the whole coronavirus thing, and without wanting to go on too much about coronavirus, but this is the first time. So, when me and Justin visited the Pacific Islands, we had to have proof of our measles vaccine, and it was on a piece of paper. Now with coronavirus, it's going to be a digital thing rather than a piece of paper. And as we move forward in the next 10, 20, 30 years, I think passport stamps, they're just going to disappear. I mean, they're already on the way out. I think that's where we're going. It'll be digital visas and stuff like that. So we're just moving. We're moving with the times. I agree with you. I mean, I love a passport stamp, but also I spend more money on passports than your average Joe. Like an average passport lasts me 3 years. So it's cool. But then when you get to your last 2 pages, you're like, shit. Did China have to stamp me every time I came back in? You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a funny one. But yeah, we all love a passport stamp. What's not to love about a passport stamp, eh?
Yeah, and I think it's part of the Micronations fascination. Like I've got passport stamps for about 5 countries that not only the UN wouldn't recognise, but FIFA wouldn't recognise, but a lot of the Traveller Century Club guys, they wouldn't sort of recognise them. But I've got 5 physical passport stamps in my passport of those, but yet I don't have one for Belgium, Spain, or Luxembourg, or Slovakia probably. So it's interesting that you can look at something physical, or you can look at something that is set by an authority, which is an authority in a country that you don't even belong to, like the UN or FIFA, for example. So all different people look at it in a different way, but I'm always going to look at it the way I want to, and that inspires me more than
absolutely. And I think that is one of the things I do love about you, Jonny, is you take your own path on things, and please never change on that. I will add that I've definitely got one stamp you don't have, and I know that because I printed the bloody stamp myself. But everybody that came to Berta Will with me, those that wanted it, we got stamped.
Yeah.
We stamped ourselves for Berta Will, mate. I'm pretty proud.
The thing is, Gareth, you actually did invite me on that. I think,
of course, because I thought that would be right down your alley. I thought you would love that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't able to go. I'm just thinking, was that did you go there twice or just once?
No, we went there once. It was very eventful.
Yeah,
we will go back at some point. I've got to take Justin now.
No.
I've got to take do you know the footballer Dave Kitson? We're taking him to Berta Will.
Of course, yeah. He was Reading, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the podcast before you, so you're in good company.
Oh yeah, I'll have to catch up with Dave, because I actually do a bit of work on another football podcast, Gareth. In the UK, I'm part of. There's a podcast called Stick It Up Your Ballocks. Obviously reference to Michael Ballocks there, but I work on that because it's retro. It's like 80s and 90s, before the Moneybag boys took over football.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of into that, because Dave Kitson would have been around, in the era before the really big money kicked in, which is sort of. He was just
before that. I think he partly regrets it, but yeah, I think he's doing all right. But yeah, I think just before that. But I'll happily, I'll give him a message and see if he's up for doing that for you for sure. But anyway, I'm conscious of the fact that one, I'm taking up lots of your time, and two, I told you when we spoke about doing this podcast, my biggest worry was that we wouldn't be able to stop talking. And I think I was right on that one. So I need to talk to you. You've been to 188 countries, or 188 of what you view as a country. So I've got a couple of questions I've got to get out of the way. What's the weirdest place you've been to, brother?
That is a really good question. Weird. Are you talking about country or just city or weirdest?
Do you know what, mate? It's the answer is your answer. You can give me a micronation. You can give me a whatever. You can answer however you want to answer.
This is a weirdest place. Okay, I've got it. It's Uzbekistan.
Okay.
And
why?
There's so much about Uzbekistan that just doesn't fit with me. I find it's possibly the hardest country that I could live in. But and here it is, right? So first of all, when you're crossing the border into Uzbekistan, whether you've got a multiple entry visa or whatever, they check everything. So basically, what did I have? I had a big backpack and then a smaller backpack. So everything was checked. For what reason? Still don't know, because I'm a tourist and I'm trying to promote them. So basically, I wanted to go to Uzbekistan to sort of, see it for myself and then write about it. Now, I did write a wee bit about it, but I didn't write very much. I didn't really write positively about it. So it was so weird that, first of all, it took me a long time to get the visa, a long time to get in. And then the other part that I found in Uzbekistan was the people and the system were, where are the girls? So basically, I go to, a bus station, which isn't a bus station, it's just a taxi rank, because bus station doesn't seem to exist in the places I was in Uzbekistan. You go to a taxi rank and everyone is male. It's like, are there any girls about? It's like, oh, the girls are doing something else. What are they doing? What they're doing, washing, or they're making bread, or, what are they doing? And it I think it was in my 4th or 5th day that I actually finally spoke to a female. and it was just so weird. I was like, why are you segregating people in that way? That, is it because I'm foreign and you don't want me to meet the girl because they might be attractive? Or it just didn't fit well with me. And I thought, no, I don't like the guys here. I don't like the girls here. And then the weird thing is, Gareth, later in life, I ended up living with an Uzbek guy. I lived with an Uzbek guy, and I actually liked him. So,
this reminds me of crossing the border from Iran into Armenia. And again, I mean, I absolutely love Iran. I've got very little bad to say about Iran. But when you cross into that Armenian border town, and it's just, you just look, and there's casinos and strip clubs and alcohol and whatever, you're like, whoa, what difference a few meters does make.
Yeah. So going back to the Uzbek thing. So did you ever find out what the explanation was? Like, and when you lived with the guy who was Uzbek, did you say, like, when I went there, this is what happened, what was going on? Did anyone ever explain it to you?
Yeah, I've actually, the weird thing is, because I've been to all the sort of countries that border it. I've been to Russia, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, etc. And none of those countries were quite as weird as Uzbek. And he said to me, well, first of all, it's some type of dictatorship, which is not really as publicized as a dictatorship, because at least with somewhere like North Korea or Turkmenistan, we know it's a dictatorship. But because German tourists love to go to Uzbekistan and post photos from Samarkand, they make it look like a Disneyland of paradise or something, and it's not. I mean, there are a few nice mosques. Take your photos and be on your way, and stop crying your heart out. That's Noel Gallagher's sort of mantra that I've just quoted there on Uzbekistan, but that's what it is. I eventually wanted to get in, have a look, and get out. But yeah, later on I was told that basically there is a segregation. The Islamic culture likes to have men and women segregated, and also that Uzbek guy that I lived with him in Poland, so he had a totally different outlook. He was like, yeah, those people need to get out and see a wee bit more of the world and realise that. And also what got me about Uzbekistan is, every time I would get on a bus, right, Gareth, you'll like this one. Every time I would get on a bus or a shared taxi to go somewhere, I'd grab about 3 or 4 beers. And the reason I would do that is because I was bored with the other people. I didn't want to talk to them. Even, if I got my phrase book out and spoke Russian or tried to translate into Uzbek, I didn't want to talk to them. I just wanted to have a beer, look out the window and enjoy it. But the weird thing is, they were looking at me as if I was a weirdo having a beer, but they're smoking like trains. I mean, the amount of cigarettes, people were sitting beside me on these buses and just smoking non-stop. But yet I had the problem because I was the beer boy. But the Uzbek beer, they had 3 main types there. There was the red one, the blue one, and the green one, all the same brand. Can't even remember the name of it, but I would walk my way through them, and then just as I was leaving on my final day, I thought, actually, maybe I've been a bit harsh, because I am the tourist here. They let me in. I had a double entry visa. They let me in. 11 days they gave me in the end on the visa, so it was they wouldn't give me any more at that time. And then I thought, well, I've seen it, I've done it, I don't need to go back there. So it's basically I closed the door on it. But it was weird, Gareth. Yeah, it was weird.
Yes, and there is sort of the hippie view or the politically correct view. Oh, the world's all wonderful, everyone's wonderful, everything's great. But the simple fact of the matter is, the world is like beers or chocolate bars. There are places you go, there are chocolate bars you like, there are chocolate bars you don't. You know what I mean? There are places you go where you love and you want to go back. And there are people in certain countries that are friendlier than other countries. And I've got one. I've not been to Uzbekistan, so I can't comment on it. But there are certainly countries
it's
that
also,
I've been to, I don't want to go back to.
It's also, Gareth, we've talked about it before, where it's also a real thing where some countries you rock up and you're just like, I don't like it here. And it happens. It's a real thing, every once in a while.
I'm just on another
I will
point
say
there.
I will say it's the exception, but
yeah, it's. I just want to say,
some
guys,
people
as
are just
well,
friendly
I
and
should
others.
actually mention. there seems to be a bit of a lag or a delay with some of the talking there, but I just wanted to say that in Uzbekistan as well, I went to Karakol, Pakistan, which I personally recognise as a country because it's a separate part of Uzbekistan. It's got its own. It's got its own language, its own flag, its own government, and the capital city there is Nukus, and I loved Nukus. So even though I didn't like Uzbekistan, as I call it, or I felt it was a little bit, oh, look at our mosques, but there's no girls allowed. It felt to me like it was two totally different countries. Karakol, Pakistan was mad. I was on a bus drinking whiskey with a boy, so it was a little bit of a contrast.
I personally wouldn't count that as a country, but I can understand why you would. It falls into the very grey area with me. I'm very interested in that place. We recently wrote a blog that included about that place. We were writing about all the different stans, which maybe I'll post as a link as part of this blog. Okay, so that's the weirdest / worst place you've been to. Which was going to be another question. You did good. You put it all together for me. What's the best micronation you've been to? So forgetting, again, me and you are probably the only two people, or two of the few people that will get these terms, but not macronation. What's the best micronation you've been to?
Yeah, and this is one I've never spoke about before, actually. So even though I've been on a lot of podcasts and done loads of interviews, but now that I think about it, it has to be the Kingdom of Romkerhall. And I'll just tell you. I'll just tell you about this.
It already sounds great. Sounds great. So please carry on.
So Gareth, the Kingdom of Romkerhall is the world's smallest kingdom. Now that's self-monikered. They say they're the world's smallest kingdom, but this is the only reason I went there. Is I was going from Warsaw, Warszawa, to Bern, or no, not Bern, Basel in Switzerland. But to get there, I decided to go overland through Germany. So I was just researching, on the way, I've got about 3 days on the way from Poland to Switzerland. Where in Germany can I visit that is a new country that is, I could sort of go and get a passport stamp and sort of say this is a new country. And what I didn't realise was that, first of all, Kingdom of Romkerhall give you a visa. So I've got a visa in my passport. They've got their own currency. They've got a queen. I got a free guided tour because I'd already bought the visa. So when you pay for the visa, you get a guided tour of the country. And also, I was able to try beer there. They didn't even charge me for the meal. I had this really delicious chicken meal. I was only there for a day. It was a day trip from the city of Bad Harburg. I think I was in. So I'll tell you how I got there, Gareth. I got a bus. No, I got a train from Berlin to some random station. I think it was. Do you know what? I'd even have to check my blog for the name of that. It's a place called Kostler or Rosler or something. And then I got a bus to a place called Oker. And then from Oker, it was impossible to find a bus to the Kingdom of Romkerhall. So I ended up having to go to another town. And in there, I had to pay for a taxi because the only way to get to the Kingdom of Romkerhall was to actually call the king or the queen and get him to pick you up. Or you could get a taxi there. And, when I got into the taxi, speaking German to some guy... and saying, "Oh, I'm going to the kingdom today. Where are you going?" "I'm going to the kingdom." And he's looking at me as if, he classes it all as Germany. So I got my passport and all that. He's sort of looking at me going, why is this tourist getting his passport out? We were just going to I'm going into the kingdom. And then as I stepped into the door of the Kingdom of Romkerhall, because it's a hotel, which is a country, I was given a warm welcome. The girl came over, started speaking to me. She gave me a guided tour. And the saddest part for me was that I'd only booked it as a day trip. I wish I'd actually stayed overnight, because you can stay overnight. You can work your way through all the sites, and you can actually sleep in the king bed that the king and queen once slept in, because it's now open to the public. So Kingdom of Romkerhall, if anyone wants to Google it, go on there. Get your visa. And actually, here's another one, Gareth. This is a good quirk for you. Is if you want to visit a country just to use the toilet, you only have to pay €1 if you want to use the toilet. But I bought the full visa. I got the day visa, which is €5, so I'll be able to stay for the whole day. But if you just want to visit the toilet, you can pay €1, and I would count that as a visit, because you've paid for the euro, you've got the visa, you walk in, you use the toilet, and then you leave. But on the way back out of the toilet, you could probably sneak in, have a wee look at the lounge and the bar on the way out. So there you go, Kingdom of Romkerhall.
You are the true backpacker. You've just told us the $1 way to see a country that only costs €5 to get to. Sorry,
Yeah,
the
you
€1
don't even need
way
to go to
to
the toilet. You don't even need to go to the toilet. You could just use that as an excuse.
Oh my God. Okay, so listen, I could honestly just carry on for hours asking you your second favorite, your third favorite, your fourth favorite. But there are two other things that I want to talk to you about. So one, I asked you before the last time you had a real job, but didn't you briefly guide for a company that we both know?
Young Pioneer Tours.
I believe that was the company. You got me out of a little bit of trouble, didn't you?
So basically, I worked at the hotel show in Saudi Arabia, Gareth, and we
Yes, you did.
We used the word work because obviously that is the word that we're supposed to use. So I was the social media manager working there. But if I wanted, on this podcast, I might as well spill the beans. Is basically I just wanted to go backpacking in Saudi Arabia. That was I didn't want to go there and work as a social media manager or be there in that.
But
sense.
I had to hire you. I had to hire you.
So I basically had to be a member of staff at a hotel show working, and with some really good guys. We're on that tour together. We toured it together. I flew into Jeddah, and I think I was waiting on Marco to come. I think Marco flew in from Bahrain or somewhere, and for the first 2 days, I think, or the first day and a half, it was me and the boys sort of. I was their tour guide in a country I'd never been to either. So, it was brilliant, though, Gareth. It was,
and we are
cracking.
eternally grateful for that. But I remember when, because I was supposed to be on that trip, but it was, as you know, the visas were a nightmare, and I was being shuttered back from Hong Kong to Beijing and Hong Kong to Beijing, and in the end, it was Marco was going to lead the trip, but I had full confidence in you, and you did us a real solid on that one. But the second one I want to talk about. Is because this will bring Justin back into the fold, is we've all been to a country that not many people have been to.
Oh, really? So I don't know I have no idea which country you're talking about. Justin, which country is that?
It's the least visited country in the world.
Yes. I believe that would be an island in the South Pacific.
Which one?
Or
Nauru?
is it technically South? Yes, there you go.
Yes.
Technically South Pacific. Sometimes I get correct.
I think it's North Pacific. I think it might be North
right.
Pacific, but
Right.
Central Pacific. I'm not sure. But you went to Nauru, right?
Oh yeah,
Johnny?
so we're all
You went
three
with
of us
Pierre.
then.
Yeah.
Three of us.
Well, I've been there 4 times, but I mean, not that anyone's counting.
Yeah.
Not that that's anything to show. Do you know what? Not that is anything to show off about, because holy shit. Yeah. I mean, I've done about 4 weeks there. I mean, yeah. There are crimes you don't get that long for.
I mean, I will say, we were talking about sometimes you show up in a place and you think, I don't really like it here. I mean, Nauru did not fall into that category for me.
No, I like it.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I actually remember busting the myths about it, because before I went there, people tell you all sorts of fake stories, and I hate the way other travellers go there before you and they tell you all these things. So basically, I was told about 15 things about Nauru, and when I got there, none of them were true. One of them was there's no ATMs. Well, there were 3 ATMs. One of them was there's no way you can do a pub crawl. Well, I did a pub crawl. Another one was that dogs chase you everywhere. Well, I only saw about 6 dogs, and I was there for 6 days, so 5 or 6 days. So a lot of the myths about Nauru, I felt that you need to spend a wee bit of time there, and you can dispel those myths, and you can also enjoy yourself. I'm never going to stay there forever, because you end up eating Chinese food non-stop. It was a bit repetitive and a bit boring, but at least it's a beautiful little island to just witness some different type of life. They have a weird life there. No national football team either.
Well, me and Justin, I'll talk to you this privately, but me and Justin are actually working on that.
There is a long-term project in the works. I mean, honestly, I think we'd be further along with it if not for COVID.
If it wasn't for COVID, we'd be there. We'd be living in. I mean, at some point, me and Justin are going to be living in Nauru. If that, can you imagine that? But
you're welcome to join, Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny, I'm going to introduce you to our guy, because you'd love him. And I think you could actually help us with this. But Nauru football team is coming, but we shouldn't really talk any more about that. But also, there's one thing I spoke to Pierre. Pierre was your guide in Nauru, and this is another thing where me and you are going to disagree. So we've got, if you Google pub crawl in Nauru, I'm the #1 link because I count 4 bars in Nauru. How many bars do you count in Nauru, Johnny?
I thought I counted about 6 or 7. No.
Again, I think there's 4 true bars, and then you've
Gareth,
got
Do you see? This is the thing. You know that there's a place called Renav or something, and it's like a little it's a shopping centre, but you can buy a coffee there and you can drink it outside. I think I counted that because I had a beer there with. I actually had a beer there with Pierre, I think.
Well, I mean, ironically, you've got the place that's next to what's the main Bayview? Next to Bayview is Annabelle Restaurant.
And I've been in there. Yeah.
Well, they're the only place where you can get. Well, I shouldn't really say this online. Nobody from now.
Cheeseburger,
for God's sake. You can get a cheeseburger on a Sunday.
Yeah, but I had a cheeseburger. I remember because you've been eating terrible food. In fairness to all those countries, like Marshall Islands, I think is the worst country I've ever been in for food.
My goodness, no. Did you go to Marshall Islands Resort?
We stayed there. Yeah, we stayed there.
But did the sashimi, the Marshall Island poke?
I just remember. All I remember is we got hot dogs, and the hot dogs were they were soggy and they were blue molded. And every food we had there, 2 of our group got food poisoning, I think, Gareth, on that trip. So,
oh my goodness,
we all have different. But I think you can ask Pierre about that. There was one of the guys was really. One of the Norwegian guys who's with us just basically said he's not eating any more food in Marshall Islands the rest of the trip, and I sort of agreed with him. I did end up having the breakfast anyway, but it was I wouldn't write home about it. Nauru at least.
I'd say the street food in and like the fast food in Marshall Islands is very poor. But I found like the buffet. I thought the Marshall Islands Resort buffet was really good, and I'm really into raw tuna. So to be honest,
just different experiences.
My whole time in the Pacific, I ate nothing but raw tuna, and it's the one thing they've got in abundance. So so 3 people on a call that have all been to Nauru.
Madness.
All right, so I think I've kept you for an awfully long time. This has been by far our longest podcast. I think we could probably carry on talking for hours and hours more. But the last thing that I want to do, I think we should have probably put this in the first part. But you've released a couple of books, so I just want to give you a chance to promote your books. Shameless plugging, as we like to call it.
Yeah, I think this sort of goes into the whole the way life is. But my books have been delayed, Gareth. The fact is, I wrote them all before 2015. The 3 books that I've got out at the moment, I actually released them like 5 or 6 years too late. But it doesn't matter because they're all they're timeless because they go back to the time when I travelled. So it's a series. It's called Backpacking Centurion. There are 3 books. It's Volume 1, Don't Look Back in Bangor, which I'm from Bangor. Volume 2 is Lands Down Under, which is obviously basically, Antarctica, Chile, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, etc. When I was down in the southern hemisphere, living and working, Lands Down Under. And then Volume 3, which is basically, I don't know whether Volume 3 would probably be out in April or May, but it's done and dusted, and it's called Taints and Honours, which is my homage to William Shakespeare. So those are my 3 books that are out basically at the moment, and I've got more in the pipeline. Most of them are written. I just have to go through the publishing series. So if you check online, Backpacking Centurion by Jonny Blair, you can find the series if you're interested to read about my crazy journeys to such random, idiotic places on planet Earth.
Well, I tell you what, have you bought our book yet, The Men in No Man's Land?
I haven't actually. We'll have to swap then. I'll send you a copy. You send me a copy, Gareth.
Yeah, there we go. Let's do that. Let's do book swap. So you buy mine, I'll buy yours. You get a better deal on that.
Yeah,
you buy mine, I'll buy yours because you've got more books than me, so you make more out of that.
Yeah, but you only need to buy you just buy volume 1. Start at the start.
No, I buy all of
start
them.
at the end.
I'll buy all your books. Don't worry. But we've only got one book, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you just have to buy one book.
Well,
but yeah, you buy my book.
Yeah,
I buy
we'll
yours.
do the links and we'll buy
for sure.
them, yeah.
But absolutely, send over your links anyway, because we I usually retweet you and stuff like that. But we'll happily share your links and hopefully get a lot of people reading your books.
Gareth, I was going to say that just as a final word, I can't believe we've spoken for so long and we didn't even mention the word Pyongyang yet. I think that's the first mention of it on the podcast, the word Pyongyang, which is kind of like a buzzword when I talk to you or when I talk about YPT.
Do you know what? And I'm actually quite proud of that. I'm quite proud of that because it's just, certainly in the modern world, it's easy to just go back to North Korea and, North Korea is the only place and it's the weird place and it's the one that everyone gets to show off about. But again, here's a podcast where we've got 3 people. We've all been to North Korea. Cool. We could leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, and a lot of YPT's listeners, their introduction into doing, into be traveling with YPT or even a lot of adventure travel stuff might have been going to North Korea. So I think this is like almost exploring the YPT expanded universe in a sense. So if you don't touch upon it, yeah.
Yeah, it's your base point for YPT. Have you been to Pyongyang? Yeah, been there, done that, got a t-shirt, had been to the Diplo, and then back into China.
Yep.
Yeah. The Diplo. There are some stories about the Diplo. That could be a podcast in itself. Confessions from the Diplo. But I think that I would be the one big loser on that one. So maybe that's a podcast that isn't going to happen. But all right. So there are stories. So without further ado, I'm going to bring the podcast to a close. I want to say huge thank you to you, Jonny. Again, I'm not surprised this went on so long because I knew that once me and you got talking, it would go something like this. I could carry on and ask a million other questions, but everything that starts has to have an end. So a huge thank you to you and to our listeners out there. You're the lucky ones. You're the ones who are subscribing. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this one. We've got some absolute corkers coming up. In about 11 hours, I'm going to be interviewing Tate Steinsick, the legendary special effects person and director of the movie Castle Freak. And we've got a lot of other fun people lined up as well. So if you're a subscriber, you're going to get all of this fun stuff. So thank you, Jonny. Thank you, my tubby hubby, Justin Martell. And we shall see you on the next Pioneer Podcast.